In this episode, we speak with Reno air racer Formula One pilot Justin Meaders. So out here in Mineral Wells, Texas, have a real delight today in visiting with Justin. And behind here, we did another episode on his current project, but in most of his days, he's doing something much faster, and that's what we want to talk about today. So Justin, introduce yourself and who you are, what you do.
Okay, I'm Justin Meaders. I have Limitless Air Racing as our race company. And I've raced Formula One air racing, and we build aircraft and aircraft parts and engines and stuff like that.
A little bit of everything. So define to everybody what's, and to myself, because I'm learning here as well, what exactly is Formula One? Carve that out for us.
Right. So Formula One it's a formula for the aircraft. We all run the same engine, which is a Continental 0200 engine. We have to have a minimum of 66 square feet of wing area. We have a fixed pitch propeller, a minimum of 500 pounds aircraft weight, minimum dry weight, and so we all have to stay within those rules. You can build the aircraft any way you want to get to those rules,
okay,
but we all have to be inside those rules.
The shape doesn't matter so much as the numbers that add up to that.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Some people have a short slab style wing. Some, like my aircraft, is a long tapered wing with elliptical leading edge, and it's just everybody's idea of what is going to be fast is kind of how you see all the different variations in the airplanes.
Okay, now that's the airframe side of it. Are you allowed different engines, or is there only one engine in the Formula class?
Just the one, the Continental 0200. The Rolls-Royce or the Continental, which is the same engine, it's just licensed differently, but everybody has to run that same engine. There's a whole nother set of rules for the engine. You know, everybody runs the same engine, but it also has to be stock compression ratio. It can't be overboard a bunch. We have to be within the stock cam profile. We run the carburetor, the MA3 SPA Marvel carburetor that came with those. So there's a lot of stuff there that you can't. You have to use all those parts to stay within the rules.
So a stock 0200 at face value doesn't sound very exciting, doesn't sound very Formula One at all. So what brings it into the Formula One class that you can utilize it as an actual race plane
engine?
As
a race engine, sure. Well, you know, on a 150, you know, that's dragging that thing along at like 105 miles an hour or whatever, maybe on a good day with like 200 feet a minute climb or something. So we take the engine completely apart, of course. We go through everything. We look at all the tolerances. We balance everything perfectly. The bore, you know, stock, you know, on a stock cylinder, the bore is not usually perfectly round. We're making sure that's all taken care of. We run stock compression ratio, but we can run a different piston, so you can get a lot nicer piston than the factory piston.
Okay.
We'll run different rings that seal a little bit better than a factory ring. Things like that. And then we flow the cylinders and all that kind of stuff.
Everything you possibly can without touching
possible,
much of it. Yeah,
right.
Gotcha.
And the big thing is the 0200 is very choked down from the factory, because they only care about 100 horsepower. They don't care how you get there. They just want that 100 horsepower. So it's a really good engine, and it's capable of a lot of things, a lot of power, really, if you want it to be. So if you can get the airflow through the engine, it really wakes up, and especially with the RPM we turn at about 4,500 RPM.
4,500, which is nearly double.
Yeah, almost, yeah.
Of what you would run in a factory stock 0200.
Right, exactly. They sound really good at 4,500
yeah.
RPM. Yeah, they are.
So at that RPM, what size prop are you able to run because of the speed tips of the prop tips?
That's another area where everybody has to run a fixed pitch propeller, but everybody, you know, there's certain people that think a little bit longer prop works better, and some people think a shorter prop. I personally run, my current prop is a 46-inch diameter, which is a tiny prop.
Tiny, yeah.
But we're trying to stay away from supersonic on the tips. You know, we're trying to keep it in a very efficient range on the tips. So we're turning the tips slower at that length propeller. And then we just have, it's a lot of pitch on the propeller to get the speeds that we're getting.
Justin, let's jump into how you got started. Like, did you go out to Reno races as a little boy and like, that's what I want to do when I grow up? Or how did you get into this style of aviation?
Well, aviation has been with me for a long time. My dad was a pilot and started flying with him as a kid and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then I didn't know anything about the air racing for a long time. It was probably, I think I started hearing about Reno in like 99, 2000 or something like that. And then I found out about Formula One racing then and kind of fell in love with it because it's a neat class. It's very, it's not like whoever can throw the most money at it can win. It's like everybody is you're inside these rules
right.
to be able to do it. So you have to be able to build a nice airplane and then fly it well to be able to go fast. Because you can have the fastest airplane in the world and not go very fast if you're not flying it well.
Okay.
So that was kind of one of the things that I really liked about that it's a lot about pilot and airplane.
Sort of like NASCAR with wings.
Yeah.
They had restrictor plates and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That engine can only make so much horsepower within the rules. And then so the next thing that you do would be drag reduction with the airframe and then improvements with your flying.
Okay.
And that's how you get the thing to go fast. And I always tell everybody that, my airplane is really fast. I said, I'm probably the improvement that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
So you jumped right into this class, or wasn't any other racing before that, or competing?
No, air racing. I come from the motorcycle racing world,
okay.
And that's how I got hurt. And then, so I fell in love with the Formula stuff, like I said, and then, so I started going to Reno and watching the races and that stuff, and then I decided I was going to build an airplane. And so that took a little longer than I expected it to.
And did you build that from scratch? Is there plans to build one of these
from
scratch?
It's a plans-built aircraft,
okay.
Yeah. So, and it's a big variation from the plans-built aircraft too. So the original, my airplane is a snowshoe,
mm-hmm.
Which there's only a couple of those in the world, and mine's the only one currently flying.
Awesome.
So the original airplane had a wood wing, wood tail, all that, and then it had I don't know if it was fiberglass or carbon, just back to the back of the cockpit, and then it was fabric from then on back. And my airplane is carbon skins from tip to tail, carbon wing, carbon tail, all that. So it's quite a bit different from the stock airplane or from the original design.
Sure.
To what I have now. Everything is always a snowball effect. You're like, I'm going to build this, and then it kind of keeps going.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons it took a lot longer than I originally anticipated too. So in the process of building that airplane, I made friends that were Formula One people, pilots and the crew and all that kind of stuff. And so in 2016, I borrowed an airplane and raced in Reno in 2016. And then I thought I would have my airplane ready in 17, but I didn't have it ready until 18. So I had to skip a year after my first year, and then since then I've been racing ever since.
Okay. And what, kind of walk us through what it's like to get into this aircraft and do some pre-flight stuff, and what do you roll out on the runway, rotate and climb at? I mean, obviously, when you really open this thing up is when you get to that, but walk us through what it's like to actually fly this thing off the deck and get into the race. So
race flying, okay, so we typically tow the airplanes out to the runway because so Formula One racing, we have a race, horse race start, so we're all going at the same time.
Okay.
So we're all eight of us are on the runway at the same time, and that's all off of your qualifying position. So if you qualified first, you get first pick on the grid. And typically first pick on the grid is inside front row.
Okay.
So you're closest to the first turn.
Sure.
So we tow our airplanes out there into position on the runway to wherever our starting position is, and we get in the airplane. Well, of course, we've already looked the airplane over to make sure it's safe to fly.
Right.
We get in the airplanes, and our crews are out there just kind of making sure everything's working fine and get you in the airplane and strapped in the airplane, all that kind of stuff. Fire the airplane up, get it up to temperature, and then your crew, after you've made sure that it's running properly and all that stuff, then your crew takes off and they go to the to the recovery area after the race. So then you're just sitting there by yourself on the runway with 7 other airplanes waiting for the green flag to drop. And once once you get the green flag, everybody launches at the same time. We're all going formation takeoff.
Yeah.
There can be overtaking on takeoff if there's faster aircraft, faster accelerating aircraft on takeoff. So it can get exciting on the takeoff. And then once we're kind of all established and everybody gets kind of shuffled into position and stuff, then we're going onto the race course. So it's you leave the runway and we climb to about 50 feet, and that's where we stay pretty much the whole time. 50 to 250 is our block. 50 to 250 is our block of altitude.
Okay.
But no one's ever up that high. We're usually maybe at 100 feet at our highest. And then you're running the race course. It's a big oval race course.
Is there a reason for not going a little bit higher? I would think you'd want to be at the 250 level versus the 50. So are you trying to cut the corner closer about the pylon?
Right. Yeah. So the lower you fly, the tighter you can be on the pylon.
Okay.
So you're essentially flying a shorter course.
Gotcha.
Whereas anytime you go up, when you're on your bank, you're kind of looking off your wing to see the pylon, because if you cut the pylon, it's a time penalty.
Okay. So that far away, then it's hard to judge.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You're anytime, because you're not at a 90-degree bank,
Yeah.
so you're probably maybe 80 or 85. So any distance in altitude is going to push you out further on the course.
Yeah. It's one less thing to keep out of your mental scope of like,
Right.
it's right there if you're at 50 feet versus like
Yeah.
it's kind of right there at 250.
Yeah, and you'll elevate to pass people.
Okay.
Like if you have lap traffic or if you're passing someone that you're faster than or whatever.
It gives you a buffer and room to maneuver.
Right. So we have that vertical element, but we typically stay on almost the same altitude if we can.
So being that you're departing together 7 or 8, so you're kind of like obviously keeping stagger, so you're not really paying attention to airspeed so much then.
Right.
It's more when you roll out. And then is there like I'm embarrassed to say I haven't been to a Reno race yet, but September I need to go apparently, right?
You do.
Is there like a flag that's dropped and you kind of firewall it from there,
Right.
or how does?
So we have multiple flags. We have flags during the race, of course, but so before the race we have a red flag, which they raise up to let everybody know that we're getting closer to launch.
Yeah.
And then they'll bring the red flag down and the green flag comes up. And then when the green flag drops, we all go.
Okay.
And then that's basically, the race has started then, but the time hasn't started. So the time actually doesn't start until you come around and cross the start-finish line after your first 0 lap.
We are partnering with great companies like Dynon Avionics at Dynon.com, Airtech Coatings at AirTechCoatings.com, Clemens Insurance at ClemensInsurance.net, The Aviators Clinic at AviatorsClinic.com, Foxtrot 95, Calhoun County Airport at FlyFoxtrot95.com. Take a moment to go visit their websites at the links found below in the description of this video. And visit our website at ExperimentalAircraftChannel.com for events, our video library arranged in easy-to-find playlists on specific topics, affiliate products, aviation merchandise, and so much more. All right, so let's get in kind of to like the psychology of it a little bit, which would be cockpit management,
Sure.
right? Do you just have like a tachometer and an oil pressure gauge, and that's it? What are you looking at as far as that goes?
Yeah.
And then your mental awareness of managing that versus separation, and just kind of walk me through what that's like.
Some people do just run minimum with just a few analog gauges. My particular setup, I have an EFIS in the airplane with engine monitor and flight instruments, and I have everything set up to where all I have to do is glance and see what color it is, and I know if it's good or not, so I don't have to stay inside long at all, because obviously with 7 other airplanes and trying to maintain separation and not hit pylons.
Right.
So you don't want to be outside the airplane as much as possible.
And with that, have you specifically chosen certain instruments to be analog versus the digital, so it's even more an easy glance?
Everything on my airplane is all digital.
Okay.
And it actually, I can alarm it to where if it's changing colors or there's a bar across the screen, it's telling you high alarm or caution or whatever. So if I look in and I see everything is green, I know everything is good. And it takes just a second to look to see if everything's green.
Okay.
Because sometimes we're flying really close to other airplanes, so you don't want to be inside any longer than you have to.
Gotcha. I know from like going back to your motorcycle days, and I've ridden a few sport bikes, like they purposefully have They've gone to digital, like on speed, but the RPM is still an analog tach,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
so it's just a really quick, but you're able to see that easily in a digital environment.
Right, yeah. And RPM, I'm not looking at too much. Sometimes I'll look at it on the straightaway just to make sure that I'm getting the RPM that I want. But the engine, it's full throttle the whole time, so it's going to be doing whatever it'll do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from about 10 seconds before they drop the green flag to the finish line, it's going to be full throttle.
Okay, and you're saying you fly pretty well tight pattern in the corners and stuff like that. And you know, they say rubbin's racing and car stuff, but not so much aviation. But wait a minute, I've heard there is some rubbing in air racing.
There has been, yeah, and not always with successful outcomes, but sometimes they have some bumping.
Okay.
Obviously, that's very much frowned upon.
Is that usually at tips, or is it beyond tips?
There's been several that have been, you know, that it was like a 2 wings hit or something that had good outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But definitely that's part of our training is, you know, situational awareness on the race course and management of your altitude management, things like that, so that you're not going to fly into another airplane.
Now, just the fact that this is more or less a circle track or
oval,
right?
Right.
For the most part, if you were to get too close, you kind of just relax and you're going to just fall out of the formation anyway, are you not? Depending on your position, you don't want to fall out into somebody, obviously. But
right, yeah, that's the issue. Is if you don't know what's on the outside of you can't really do that. Usually, our escape is up and in.
Okay.
So inside the race course.
So you're literally going to pull.
If you're coming down into somebody, you're probably already having an issue anyway. So you know.
Okay.
Pull up and in. You know, you're going to go up and in because usually no one's going to be above you.
Right.
So that's the safest place to go is inside the race course because there should be nothing inside the race course.
Makes sense. Yeah. And do you have a G meter in yours, or you don't care about that because you're not doing aerobatics?
We've run a G meter in it before. We don't run one all the time, but we have run one before. Yeah.
And what do you typically pull in a turn?
Depends on how rough the air is.
Okay.
You know, typically the race course is designed to be a 3G turn. But we're going faster than the design speed sometimes on the race course. So, you know, 4 is pretty normal on the race course, and then sometimes 5 or 6 if it's rough and you're having to pull hard.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not a lot of sustained at higher Gs like that, but you can definitely spike up to those numbers.
Yeah. Now let's talk about something that maybe we don't think about through this because you know, a lot of the racing we see is on the ground, but in the air, how do you guys manage the crosswind as you're going?
Sure.
As you're lapping around there to keep from drifting or.
Sure. Yeah. It's we've had some pretty rough, windy times out there. So actually, we had in 21 in the final gold race, we had almost to our wind limit speeds when we launched.
Okay.
And so it was actually blowing across the race course. So it was challenging. You know, you basically are. I mean, you're still kind of pointing at where you want to go, but you can definitely tell that the airplane is in a crab a little bit through the race course. It's not as bad as like flying a Cessna or something like that because you're going so much faster.
Okay.
So you're kind of overcoming some of that crosswind, but it is something you have to compensate for. The big thing is when you're turning. If you have a tailwind turning into the turn, it's pushing you through the turn, so your G's are usually a lot higher on the exit of the turn.
So when you get in, we'd say that in automotive world, late braking, right before you end up pulling into the turn, right?
Yeah. So the entry into the turn is a little bit softer, but then it's a hard pull coming out of the turn.
And do you need to factor that, like converting to car speed and late braking into a turn where you're really staying on the brakes? You don't have any brakes, but you can overshoot.
Oh yeah,
or you're just really pulling hard to keep that.
If you overshoot, you definitely would have to pull hard to stay on the course and not cross the show line and all that kind of thing. You know, it's immediate disqualification if you cross the show line, and for good reason because there's people over there and that kind of safety areas and stuff like that.
And to manage that, let's say on a high windy day, do you ever pull throttle through that, or no? You're always powering through the turn.
Yeah, always powering through. Yeah, just pull more G if you need to.
Because otherwise somebody's going to immediately overtake you the second you.
Possibly, yeah. Sometimes it's that close. Sometimes not so much, but you know, it's these engines are. Very high strung, and you don't want to change something that could cause an issue either. You know, so just leave everything the way it's set. Maybe play with the mixture a little bit to try to maybe get a little more RPM, or if it's getting too hot, you can add a little fuel back to hopefully cool it down a little bit.
Okay. So once you get it, you run it pretty well firewalled the whole time, and you're literally adjusting mixture to get a little bit.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more
fine
RPM.
adjustments.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or like I said, if you're seeing the temperatures going up, you might try to add a little fuel back into it.
All right. So when this is all coming to an end, and you've won, of course, you've won,
hopefully,
right?
Yeah.
And you all.
That's always the goal.
What's it look like coming back to land then at the airport, or the airstrip?
Right. So in Reno, which is our main race venue, you cross the finish line, you'll do an immediate zoom climb. Just like I said, if you change the throttle setting, you don't know what the engine's really going to do because you've just punished it for that whole race. Now you're hoping it's going to continue working properly, but you never know. So you basically want to get yourself set up on an almost immediate downwind.
Okay.
A zoom climb to scrub the speed and get altitude, and then you can be on an immediate downwind. So that when you pull the engine back as you're climbing, it'll if it quits, you can make it back to a runway. So then we set up a downwind, and everybody kind of lands in the order that they finished in. And then so my airplane is very slick airplane, so I actually have to go out quite a ways to get back to the runway, get slowed down and come down and all that stuff. And then so we recover with a hot side, cold side landing, which means you land on the runway, on the part of the runway that's the furthest from the exit. So if you're exiting to the right of the runway, then you land on the left side of the runway. And then once you're touched down and under control, you transition to the cold side of the runway, which is your exit side.
Okay.
So that another airplane can land immediately.
So you literally like lane change once you land.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And then so the reason we do that is so we can recover all of our airplanes quickly, but also if I'm on the cold side and this airplane's landing and he needs to go around for any reason, we don't have any overlap, and he can go right by and go on ahead.
And you don't want that, of course, because somebody engine decides to quit after the race, then
exactly, and
they're committed.
That's why we want everybody to be able to recover quickly too, so no one's taxiing all the way down the runway to exit. You can already be over and then exit wherever you need to.
So what is the average speed that you guys are racing at, and then what is the fastest you've had your airplane?
Average varies a lot. So we have gold, silver, and bronze class airplanes in Formula. Probably the slowest Formula is around 150 or 160, and then the average speed for the race, and then our average in the gold is 260s, somewhere in there. Yeah, 250, 260, something like that is our average. And then I've had my airplane to just over, a little over 300 with it.
Wow.
A little ways over 300, yeah.
What's the V&E of that aircraft?
Not sure.
It's not sure-ish?
Yeah, we haven't found it yet.
Okay.
I would say we've been around 320 with the airplane, and I would say, that's probably pretty close to the limit of what we can do with the engine combination and propeller.
Okay.
But if you dove the airplane, you could probably safely go somewhere in the 400 range with it, with everything we've done so you don't have flutter issues or canopy issues or anything like that. Should be safe to about 4.
That's crazy. That's crazy. All right. Well, I've learned something today, and I look forward to trying to experience this in person. What are the dates this year, and how do you go about going ahead and planning to come out there, getting tickets and stuff like that?
The race is always September in Reno, and if you go to airrace.org, that's where you can buy tickets, and it'll have all the updates and the race dates and what races happen on what days and stuff like that.
Now, the thing we talked about off camera here briefly, I'm what they call like a flat footer from Florida, right?
Sure.
So like 42 elevation, 42 feet. Out here, what's the elevation in Reno?
Reno elevation is about 5,000 feet.
About 5.
And then density altitude on top of that.
So 5,000 feet as a minimum. Like I said, density altitude is go above that.
Sure.
So I'm probably need to do a little bit of cardio before I come out and hang out for a couple days, just because the lack of oxygen in the air will make you tired.
Absolutely, it will. Yeah, and it changes the way the airplane handles too. It's just like flying at anything up at altitude. It's going to be a little bit different, and landing at altitude too. Yeah. But yeah, definitely hydrate while you're in a high altitude environment like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put a link in the description below of this video to get tickets for this in September, and is there a place that people could actually go out on the ramp before or after the race to meet you? Or
yeah, they have. You can get pit passes to go in and see all the aircraft, all the different classes. And ours is, our class is all hangared in the Formula One hangar in Reno, which is the Reno Air Racing Association's hangar.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's like the main hangar. I mean, there's other big hangars too, but that one's the Reno hangar for the racing.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Be sure to make your travel plans now to visit Reno, Nevada, and buy your tickets well in advance to experience the very last Reno Air Races, September 13th through the 17th, 2023.